Hello and welcome to another weekly update. Couple of interesting things to tell you about this week. So diving straight in, the first is a series of blog posts that are being put out by the Microsoft Graph team, and the whole series is called A Lap Around Microsoft Graph Toolkit, and it's a blog series of articles to introduce the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. So if you don't know what the toolkit is, it's a set of reusable kind of framework agnostic components that really make it easier to use Microsoft Graph. It's a collection of SDKs and controls and things for doing common activities on Graph. So if you do anything with Graph, you absolutely should be aware of this toolkit. It is really useful. It's a real time saver. It can really help you accelerate, or it's really good if you're just getting started with Microsoft Graph as well. So series of blog posts. The first two are already out. I'm going to link to the series landing page where you can kind of see all of them, and you can see what's coming up as well, and then the links are just going to kind of pop in there as each blog post gets released. So the ones that are out already are a whole one about an overview of the toolkit, what it can do, why you would use it, and then a zero to hero one, which is kind of interesting, taking you from really never having used it before, first principles, and getting something up and working. So that's kind of exciting. So if you've been looking for a reason to jump into Microsoft Graph and you haven't done it yet, have a look at the toolkit, because it's a really nice way of getting started. If you've done stuff with Graph, but you've only ever just kind of made and received REST calls, and that's how you've interacted with Graph, then I would definitely take a look at the toolkit, because it will probably save you a load of time. All right. Okay, so second thing I want to call out is a blog post by the Microsoft Teams team. It's not specifically a technology focused, it's not like a techie developer focused blog. It's around Microsoft Teams and using apps in Microsoft Teams, and that's why I've put it in here, because we're all interested in apps on Microsoft Teams. This is kind of more from the consumer side in terms of what apps would you use, and it's the focus on the fact that lots and lots of people are working remotely at the moment, and the challenges that faces, and so how some apps that you can install in Microsoft Teams can help with some of that. And so it's a curated list basically of apps that the Microsoft team think will be useful as we all get used to this new way of working. Two reasons I guess for looking at this. The first is we're all working remotely, so actually genuinely these apps might be useful to you anyway, regardless of whether you're a developer or not. So it's worth looking through that list and seeing if there's something in there for you or for your organization. But actually the other reason I put this in is it's always useful to see how other people are using the same APIs, toolkits, functionality, and hooks into Graph and Teams that everybody else has and that we all have. And it's interesting to see how people are using those and the apps that they're building. As a developer, that's professionally interesting, and I think it's kind of interesting and good to keep an eye on what people are doing, because then it gives you ideas for your own stuff as well. So two reasons for putting this list in here. So you can read this list on whatever level you want. Either if you just want to pick it up for some good ideas for apps for you or your company, that's great. But also it's also good to dig a little bit deeper and think, how did they do that? What API calls do I think they used in order to make this app happen? Is also, I think, a good exercise to go through. All right. Something a bit more technical, I guess, but again, it's not specifically developer focused, but of real benefit and interest to developers though, is the Office 365 CLI and also PowerShell. So this is a kind of a getting started post, and it's about using the Office 365 CLI. If you've not used it before and you've no idea what the Office 365 CLI is, but you do know what the Azure CLI is, it's kind of the same, but more obviously focused towards Office 365 workloads. If you don't, then you definitely want to read this blog post. There's a lot of functionality that is only really possible through PowerShell on Windows, and that's unfortunate because it ties you into using Windows. That came across all wrong. What I mean is, if if you don't have Windows, if you're on any other platform, you're precluded from doing that because you can't run PowerShell, and that's not great if you're supposed to be managing an Office 365 environment. So the CLI is a lot more cross-platform as a command tool. You can use it on Windows, but you can also use it on Macs, you can use it on Linux, so you've got a range of different options. It runs on Node.js, which is why it's so agnostic. So yeah, it's kind of interesting for developers. You might be interested. I know a lot of developers in this space do not have Windows machines, so you might find this useful because actually having a good command line tool to manipulate Office 365 is really useful. I've seen this myself. There's things that are either really fiddly to do in the UI or just not practical to do at scale that you really want to batch, you want to run a command line process for, even just to get stuff done, to set up test environments, if not actually part of a kind of application or something in production, it's just part of the setup and teardown stuff. So yeah, genuinely useful, I think, this. So definitely worth looking at how you get that set up and how you get it running as well. And there's lots of help as well. There's command line level help in there. The blog post goes through how to get help for different commands and stuff as well, so that's handy. And finally, something for you to watch, to enjoy in your, whilst you're stuck inside and can't go anywhere. And that's a recording from the Patterns and Practices group of a general developer special interest group recording that happened 2 days ago on the 16th of April. So this is kind of the latest news from both the Microsoft 365 and kind of the SharePoint side of the engineering team, but there's things in there that are not just SharePoint based, so don't write it off because it's kind of come out of the SharePoint side of the world. There's plenty of interesting things in there. The Patterns and Practices team are across all sorts of things. There's things in there about PowerShell updates, there's things in there about CSOM core library updates. There's some Teams update stuff, specifically the Yo Teams Yeoman generator. I don't know if you've heard of that. If you haven't, you should go and check it out. It's kind of really cool. That's had an update. And then a bunch of different demos. There's a load of new REST API stuff coming into SharePoint for some from different workloads, so that's worth checking out. And then there's some other stuff as well. And Q&A kind of throughout the whole thing as well. So it's great to see how open the team are being again, and I love these blog posts because not only the one I'm going to link to, not only is the video right at the top so you can go and watch it, but then underneath it are all the topics that were covered, and then underneath that a whole slew of resources, slides that were used on the call, all of the links, the column, the samples for all the code, follow-up link posts, everywhere that you need to go if you want to go and dig into something you've seen on the call and you want to explore it a little bit further. So great resources to have. I think it's really, really good. These are still happening. Yeah, it's fantastic. All right, that's everything from me. Kind of a quick one this week, it felt like, although, well, saying 8 minutes, so maybe it wasn't that quick. Yeah, take care of yourselves, and yeah, stay safe, and have a good weekend, whatever's left of it, and I will talk to you again next time.